When British commandos prepared for a raid during the Second World War, there was no single moment when they laid out identical equipment and checked it against a standard list. Unlike regular infantry formations, the commandos were not built around uniformity. They were built around purpose. Every raid was different, every coastline unfamiliar, every landing uncertain. What a commando carried reflected that reality. Their equipment was shaped not by regulation manuals alone, but by experience, often earned the hard way. At the most basic level, British commandos wore the standard battle dress of the British Army, but they treated it as a starting point rather than a final solution. The early war battle dress consisted of a woolen jacket and trousers, durable, weather-resistant, but heavy when wet. For commandos, whose operations frequently involved amphibious landings, exposure to salt water made weight and drying time critical considerations. Almost immediately, commandos began modifying their clothing. Jackets were tailored for greater freedom of movement, cuffs tightened or reinforced, and unnecessary flaps removed. Additional pockets were added wherever possible, sewn on by unit tailors or improvised in the field. Comfort mattered far less than functionality. Clothing had to allow crawling, climbing, sprinting, and fighting in confined spaces. The most recognizable symbol of the commando was the green beret, officially adopted in 1942. It replaced the traditional headgear of conventional troops and quickly became a mark of elite status. Practically, it was compact, lightweight, and easy to stow. Symbolically, it represented something new. Soldiers trained not for massed formations, but for initiative, aggression, and independence. While steel helmets were still worn when heavy fire was expected, the beret became inseparable from the commando identity. Footwear proved to be one of the most critical and contested elements of the loadout. Standard ammunition boots offered durability, but they were heavy, stiff, and poorly suited for climbing or scrambling over wet rock. Many commandos sought alternatives. Some wore lighter boots. Others modified soles for better grip on steel decks or stone keys. In Arctic operations, insulated boots were layered with multiple socks to prevent frostbite. In warmer climates, the focus shifted to preventing blisters and maintaining agility. Over their battle dress, commandos often wore windproof smocks or specially issued jackets. These garments were not designed for appearance, but protection against wind, spray, and cold. Unlike long greatcoats, they could be worn while running or fighting without becoming entangled. In Norway, the windproof smock proved invaluable, while in later Mediterranean operations, lighter versions replaced it. The webbing a commando carried defined how much he could fight before needing resupply, something raids rarely allowed. British pattern 1937 webbing was commonly used, but often stripped down. Only what was essential remained: ammunition pouches, a water bottle, a basic field dressing pouch, and occasionally a small pack. Excess weight was discarded mercilessly. Commandos quickly learned that exhaustion killed just as surely as enemy fire. Weapons varied more than any other piece of equipment, shaped by the specific demands of a raid. Early in the war, many commandos carried the familiar Lee Enfield rifle. Its accuracy and reliability were unquestioned, but its length made it awkward in urban environments, aboard ships, or in narrow alleys. As raids increasingly involved close combat, submachine guns became more common. The Thompson submachine gun, chambered in .45 ACP, delivered heavy firepower at close range and was favored for assault roles. Its weight and limited ammunition supply were drawbacks, but few weapons matched its stopping power during sudden, violent encounters. Later in the war, the lighter Sten gun became prevalent. Crude, inexpensive, and easy to produce, it suited the commando's need for mobility and quantity. even if its reliability was imperfect. Sidearms, usually pistols, were carried by officers and specialists. These were not primary weapons, but tools of last resort, intended for emergencies when a man was separated from his unit, his main weapon disabled or lost. Knives occupied a unique place in the Commando loadout. They were tools, symbols, and weapons all at once. The Fairbairn-Sykes fighting knife, developed specifically for close-quarters combat, became iconic. Narrow and sharply pointed, it was optimized for thrusting rather than utility. Yet for everyday tasks, simpler knives were often more useful, cutting rope, opening crates, trimming camouflage, or preparing charges. Explosives defined many commando missions. Demolition teams carried plastic explosive or gelignite, carefully packed and assigned in precise quantities. Detonators and fuses were distributed with strict discipline. A man carrying explosives carried not only his own risk, but the risk of everyone around him. Charges were prepared in advance, often rehearsed repeatedly, because there would be no time for improvisation once ashore. Grenades were standard issue for many commandos, particularly during assaults on fortified positions or street fighting. The British Mills bomb remained common, although operational necessity sometimes meant using captured enemy grenades. Each grenade represented a significant weight to effect trade-off, and commandos carried only what they expected to use quickly. Beyond weapons and explosives, a commando's equipment included tools for movement and access. Rope was essential. Light but strong enough to climb cliffs, descend harbour walls, or board ships at sea, rope enabled commandos to bypass obstacles rather than confront them head-on. Wire cutters allowed silent passage through fences. Small crowbars and pry tools opened doors or hatches without explosives, when stealth mattered more than speed. Every piece of metal was scrutinized for noise. Commandos taped loose fittings, tied down buckles, and dulled shiny surfaces. A single metallic clink could reveal an entire raid. Silence was not simply preferred, it was life-saving. Personal survival equipment was minimal. A water bottle, a single field dressing, sometimes a small emergency ration. Anything that could be dropped without immediate consequence usually was. Watches were critical. Raids were timed to the minute. Fuses, withdrawal schedules, and rendezvous points depended on precise coordination. Communication equipment was rarely carried by assault teams. Radios were heavy, fragile, and unreliable under combat conditions. Instead, commandos relied on timing, pre-arranged signals, flares, whistles, or hand signals. Every man was expected to know the plan well enough to act independently if cut off. One of the most distinctive aspects of the Commando loadout was preparation for failure. Many men carried escape and evasion items hidden in their clothing, civilian garments, foreign currency, compasses sewn into seams, forged identity papers. These reflected an understanding that capture, or being left behind, was not an abstract risk, but a likely outcome. In raids like Saint-Nazaire or Frankton, withdrawal was never guaranteed. Equipment reflected that grim reality. Comfort was sacrificed entirely. Survival depended on fitness, discipline, and the ability to adapt when the plan collapsed. Crucially, the commando kit was not intended for prolonged combat. Commandos were not equipped to hold territory, endure artillery bombardment, or fight armored formations. Their loadout reflected their role: strike fast, destroy the target, and disappear before the enemy could respond with overwhelming force. Over time, lessons learned from commando operations influenced broader Allied thinking. Lightweight equipment, modular loads, flexible uniforms, and mission-specific gear would become hallmarks of airborne forces, special operations units, and post-war militaries. But during the war itself, none of this felt experimental to the men who wore it. For them, their kit was not innovation. It was survival. Every strap adjusted, every pocket sewn, every unnecessary ounce discarded reflected hard experience and close calls. The Commando loadout was lean because it had to be. It was unforgiving because the missions were unforgiving. In the darkness, on a frozen shore or under fire inside a hostile harbor, a commando carried exactly what he believed he needed and little else. Because in raiding warfare, speed mattered more than protection, silence more than firepower, and knowing when to leave mattered as much as knowing how to fight. The equipment did not make the commando, but without the right equipment, chosen not by regulation but by necessity, the commando could not survive long enough to do what he was trained to do. And in that balance between mobility and risk, between aggression and restraint, the philosophy of commando warfare could be seen, stitched into jackets, strapped across shoulders, and carried quietly into the night.